What's up, everybody? It's your man, MG Marcus Grant from NFL Network, NFL Fantasy Live, and the NFL Fantasy Football Show. You are listening to the I Only Touch Greatness podcast. Hang out with the boys. Be sure to be great.
Looking for the most beers on tap, great steaks, great staff? Head over to the John B. Pub.
We got the best beers, steaks, chicken wings, nachos in town. Come see us at the John B. Pub.
The John B. Pub, the best bar in town. Come sign up for our football pool. Say Hayes sent you.
The #1 sports podcast in Vancouver with Ryan Hayes and Big Mike.
Ryan Hayes and Big Mike are taking over the podcast scene in Vancouver. Get down or lay down. Lay down. Lay down.
So how did you get into fantasy football?
As just playing fantasy football,
And then the broadcasting side of it.
yeah, well, just as playing fantasy football, my first league was way back in the mid '90s. I was a freshman in college and was working at the student radio station as a freshman. And one of the seniors on our staff said he had a league that he put together, asked if we wanted to be in it, and so there was one spot left. And there were three of us freshmen. So it was me and two friends of mine. We got together, decided we would run a team together, the three of us. And I remember, like before the draft, we figured like, hey, we know football. Like this can't be so difficult, whatever. It can't be a big deal. So I remember before the draft, we went to like the bookstore and we bought a magazine. And we had the commissioner lived off campus, like a ways off campus. So I think we had to like bum a ride or something to get up there, for the draft. So this was like before the internet was like a big deal. So we had to do the draft in person. And I remember our first pick, this would have been 94. Our very first pick was Dan Marino. At a time when drafting quarterbacks in the first round was not really crazy. That was kind of what everybody did. We hadn't really evolved draft theory. So we drafted Marino. I don't remember who else we had. I just remember our team wasn't very good. Like I don't think we made the playoffs that year. I do remember the commissioner's girlfriend was from Boston and didn't really know any players besides the Patriots. And this is when the Patriots were just an average team at best, but she ended up getting Drew Bledsoe, Ben Coates, and Curtis Martin, and all three of those guys crushed it that year. And like I remember she stomped on us. We were like, sort of like, whatever, you only know Patriots. The Patriots aren't that great. Like, what's the big deal? And like she steamrolled us. But the other part of it is because it wasn't on the internet. You couldn't just go and set your lineup super easily. So, on Saturday nights or Sunday morning, if we forgot, we would have to get on the phone and like physically call the commissioner and like usually get his answering machine and leave our starting lineup on his answering machine. Like if you did it on Saturday night and you found out Sunday morning somebody got scratched, you were scrambling to try to like get a new lineup in. And then, on Monday morning, Tuesday morning, we would get the LA Times and we would go through the box scores. We would try to like hand calculate our scores based on the box score. We might be lucky to get updated stats and standings by like Wednesday. If the commission got around to getting on campus and like, making copies and handing them out to us. So it was different back then. Like you really had to want to play because there was a whole lot more work involved. It wasn't just, pick up your phone and, tap a couple of buttons and then set a lineup. Like you really had to, it was Dungeons and Dragons for sports nerds. Like you really had to want it.
And then you also didn't have mock drafts and shit back then.
No, like I said, we bought a magazine that, magazine was probably, published in like June. We were drafting in, September, so who knows how up to date it really was. You didn't have Twitter with like constant practice reports or anything like that. You were sort of just based on like, we drafted Dan Marino. Like he had thrown for a whole bunch of yards the last season. He was probably the, one of the top quarterbacks in the leagues. We're like, yeah, that's the guy we want. And with our first round pick, so that's what it was.
There you go. Okay, so a new question this year. If you were having a dinner party and we can invite 3 famous people dead or alive, who are you inviting?
Wow. Man, I gotta think about this one.
Yeah.
I would probably somehow Jimi Hendrix pops into my head just because why not? Because why not? Right.
Yeah.
Man, I would probably invite. Man, you really got me stumped on this one. I was not expecting. I was not expecting a brain twister like that. Jimi Hendrix is definitely one. I would probably invite, like Ricky Henderson. I take that back. I'm gonna go with King Griffey Jr., who's always my favorite baseball player.
Yeah.
I sort of it's not very often I geek out when I meet people, but I met him and I sort of geeked out a little bit when I met him. And so then the third one, I mean, it's kind of generic or whatever, but Barack Obama. I mean, why not? Like,
I like it.
Historic figure. So I would that would be my 3.
I always go with Tupac, Seth Rogen, and that because I'd like to sit there and smoke and laugh with Seth Rogen, and then probably maybe Hulk Hogan or Shakira. Probably Shakira a little bit. I like to see those hips.
Hips don't lie, right?
Yeah,
that's right.
Mike, go for one.
Yeah, well, I'll start with this one. What do you think Deshaun Watson lands, or does he land somewhere?
You know what? That is maybe the biggest question right now. I mean, signs sort of point to him maybe not playing this year. I mean, just with everything that's sort of going on, with all the legal issues that he's going through right now. And I think the latest I saw is that the FBI is now starting to investigate, some of these issues here. So that, I mean, is obviously a big thing. Still have no idea like what sort of punishment is going to come from the league, because there's going to be something. I can't imagine, he's going to go through this and have this many accusations against him. What are we? I think we're over 40 now at this point. It's hard to imagine that you're going to have this many accusations against the player and have this level of issue and not have the league step in and enforce some sort of discipline here. And obviously all of this from a football perspective, which is always sort of awkward to talk about, but it makes it hard if you're the Texans to try to trade him somewhere. But it also makes it hard for you to kind of have him on the field and play him. So, I would be very surprised if we see Deshaun Watson much, if at all, in 2021.
Okay. And do you think Odell came off the bad injury last year? Do you think he has a bounce back year?
So Odell might be one of the toughest players for me to sort of gauge this year, because I do think the guy that we saw in New York, I think he's still sort of in there a little bit. But part of me also looks at the Browns offense, and I don't think it's set up for him to necessarily get the same number of targets that he did all those years in New York. I think what we saw a couple years ago is when he first got there and they had Baker Mayfield, you had an offense that was still trying to kind of figure itself out a little bit. And I think, we saw Baker go through some pretty big growing pains, especially once Kevin Stefanski took over. And I think that sort of trickled down to a lot of the other players around him. You also had Odell that was sort of dealing with his own lower body injuries and, a couple of injuries that had hurt him in the last few years. Too. Yeah. So I think that hurt a couple of years ago. Then last year, obviously, the ACL tear early in the season and pretty much took him out for the entire year. I think this year, though, if he's back and he really is healthy and Baker's a little more comfortable in the offense, I think that helps. So I think he will have some weeks where he spikes and he helps you win that week. But I think it's also a team that they have a very good defense, right? They may not give up a lot of points. They have 2 very good running backs with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. So there will be weeks where they just get to lean on their running backs and win football games. And so that necessarily means that you won't see Odell get as many targets. So I think the talent is still there. I just don't think that the opportunity sets up in Cleveland the way it did for so many years with the Giants.
Okay. Mike?
Yeah, and who do you have with the rookie running backs? Obviously, Javonte Williams, Najee Harris, and Travis Etienne. Who do you think has the breakout year?
I think the easy answer is Najee Harris, just because he's in a situation where he is the guy. And I know people have questions about the offensive line in Pittsburgh, but there's just nobody else there to really compete with him for touches. So, I mean, he's going to be a guy that I think easily gets 250 or more touches in that Pittsburgh offense. That's something you can't say with the other two guys, Etienne and Javonte Williams. And I love Javonte Williams. He was, of all the guys to watch in this draft class, he was my favorite one to watch because I think he's very good at a lot of different things. But I mean, he's in Denver, and they're not going to just completely kick Melvin Gordon to the curb just for Javonte Williams. Similarly, in Jacksonville, I like what Etienne can do, but I still think James Robinson's going to have a role there. If you believe Urban Meyer, Carlos Hyde's going to get some work there. I'm not 100% that is what's going to happen. Like, I don't totally buy into that, but either way, there's still at least a second guy in that backfield for both Etienne and Williams to contend with, where there isn't that situation at all in Pittsburgh.
And then there's the other one is Michael Carter. Everyone's been kind of talking about too, that he might have a chance, but I mean, playing the Jets offense, how much is he going to be able to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the concern, right? I mean, I like Michael Carter, and look, he was a guy that he was teammates in college with Javonte Williams, both at North Carolina. And I do like the opportunity. There has been a lot of hype, but it's another situation where they're talking about using multiple guys there. I mean, they're talking a lot about what Tevin Coleman potentially can do in that offense. The other part to keep in mind is for all the promise that the Jets offense has, right? They've got some interesting young players. They drafted Zach Wilson at quarterback. They drafted Elijah Moore at wide receiver. They signed Corey Davis as a free agent. I mean, there's reason to kind of be optimistic, but you figure they got 6 games a year between the Dolphins, the Patriots, and the Bills. Those are not going to be easy games for them. So that's going to be a difficult thing for them to deal with. This is going to be a team that really is going to struggle to win games. They're going to struggle to score points. And so as much as I like Michael Carter, if an offense is not productive, it's hard to expect a lot of production from their running back. And so I think that's sort of the big thing working against him.
Where do you think the QB tiers start and stop kind of thing? And can you find late value in a QB?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can absolutely find late value in a quarterback. I mean, look, you still have your elite guys, right? I mean, Mahomes is sort of up there. I think he's still sort of in a tier to himself, but not far behind. You've got Josh Allen and Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson and Dak Prescott. I think are still hanging around there. Aaron Rodgers. I think Rodgers sort of slots into maybe kind of that third tier, which I think he's still going to be a top 10 quarterback. I mean, look, last year, he set career highs in a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
The 48 touchdowns were amazing. I think his touchdown percentage was really high. It was like, 9.5%. I mean, so it's like he was great and we know that he can be great, but asking him to duplicate what he did last year or even raise the bar feels like a lot. And Rodgers doesn't run to the same level that some of those other quarterbacks do, but I'm still willing to put him kind of in that same tier with, say the Russell Wilsons, the Justin Herberts. I think those guys are there. But if you don't want to get those guys, I think if you want to wait, there are players like Matthew Stafford that's still around in the 9th round that I think is going to play very well this year for the Rams. I think Ryan Tannehill is being considerably underrated, especially now. They've got a new offensive coordinator. They go and they trade for Julio Jones in the offseason. You don't get Julio Jones and not throw the ball to him at some point, right? So, I think with what we've seen Ryan Tannehill do over the last couple of years, the fact that he is still hanging around in the 9th or 10th round is maybe slightly disrespectful to him. But, for those of you who are waiting on quarterbacks, take that discount and say thank you for it.
Yeah, no kidding. And plus you got A.J. Brown there too.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. They got a lot of talent in Tennessee this year.
No doubt.
Do you think, or how many QBs do you think throw for 30 or more passing TDs? And who maybe?
Let's just sort of count them off, right? I mean, Mahomes for sure. I think Allen gets there. I think Kyler Murray can get there.
Russ
can probably get there. Dak definitely gets there. I think Herbert can get there. Rodgers, did I say Rodgers? But Rodgers can get there. I think you'll see Tom Brady. Tom Brady will certainly get there. I mean, so that right there is what, 8? Yeah. So I think that's a solid 8. I don't know that if Lamar gets there, that's amazing. I wouldn't bank on Lamar getting to 30 touchdowns this year.
No, yeah. I don't feel they got enough wide receiver help other than Hollywood Brown, but
right.
The next one I got here. So which QB say, I guess that's kind of the answer you said, maybe Tannehill, but outside the top 15 QBs, which one has the highest ceiling?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Tannehill. Maybe it's Matthew Stafford. Depending on where you have Jalen Hurts ranked, although I don't know that he's ranked outside the top 15 anywhere. I mean, he's a guy that I love because, again, you want quarterbacks who can run with the ball effectively. The stat that I keep coming back to that I love was, when he became the starter at the end of last season, those last 4 weeks of the season, the only quarterback that had more rushing yards than Jalen Hurts was Lamar Jackson. And so I think, all the reports are that, he's played well in camp. The team has really sort of rallied around him. All his teammates really love him. They think that he's the guy there. We know he can run with the ball. I think they're going to throw the ball more than anticipated this year. So he's that guy that, like I said, he might still be in the top 15, maybe kind of the back part of the top 15. But I think that the ceiling for him is really, really high, which is why I've been drafting him in as many spots as I can.
Okay.
What do you see Trey Lance doing this year?
Look, I think when he gets on the field, and I think the win is sort of the question. It's not an if, it's a win. I think, again, he's another guy who the sky is the limit because that rushing upside is huge for him. We have seen sort of the highlight plays. I mean, there was that throw he made last week against the Chiefs in the preseason game that had everybody fired up. I mean, look, I grew up in the Bay Area. I grew up as a 49er fan and have some friends on a text chain. And when he made that throw, I just got a text from one of my buddies. It was all caps. It said, "Send Jimmy G packing." Like he was like just decided that Trey Lance was the guy. So it's just a question of how long until Kyle Shanahan decides to make the move. But once it happens, I think the sky is kind of the limit for him.
Do you think we'll have 2 rookie running backs in the top 24?
I think Najee Harris is definitely in the top 24. Yeah. Again, I think the other guy who could do it would be Etienne, because I think you're going to see him get a decent sized workload from the beginning. I think Javonte Williams has the ability to, but I think at least for the first 6 weeks or so of the season, it's going to be very heavy Melvin Gordon. So I think that's just going to make it hard on him. But Najee Harris is, I think, a lock. If he doesn't get in the top 24, something went really wrong this year.
Yeah, no kidding.
And then the other 2 running backs that I got a lot of hype and I like is Gibson and Gaskin. What do you think of those 2?
So Gibson, I love. Absolutely. The way he played last year, it's hard to ignore him. And now this year, you've got Ron Rivera, the head coach, saying they want to give him a Christian McCaffrey type role in the offense. I don't know if that means he's going to get as many touches, but they do want to do different things. They want to throw him the football more, which, I mean, look, keep in mind, when he came out of college, he was primarily a wide receiver. Right? Yeah. I mean, he was a wide receiver that occasionally they gave carries to, but he comes to the NFL, he becomes a running back and does great with it. And now if they decide to throw him the ball more, that only helps his value. Gaskin, I've started to sort of back away from, and it's been an interesting life cycle for him in the offseason, where I think at the beginning of the spring, we were all worried that the Dolphins are going to do something to sort of de-emphasize him, but they didn't sign Aaron Jones. They didn't draft anybody. So then we kind of got comfortable and thought, well, maybe it's going to be all right. Then in the last week or so, you've got Brian Flores, the head coach, coming out and saying, yeah, we got 3 guys that we really like and we plan to use them all. That makes it less exciting to have Myles Gaskin. I think he is the lead running back there in Miami. I think you got Malcolm Brown and Savon Ahmed sort of hanging out behind him, and they're going to get opportunities. Gaskin will be the number 1, but I'm less excited about how many times he's going to touch the ball now with the head coach basically saying we got 3 guys that we really like and we're going to use. Yeah,
good Washington Husky too.
Yeah,
being that we're in Vancouver, right? So we're only a 2-hour drive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Justin Herbert, Burrow, or Tua, who has a better year?
Who was the second one? I heard Herbert and Tua and
Burrow. Joe Burrow.
I'm gonna still go with Herbert. I just think he's got a better team around him right now. I mean, he was phenomenal last year, and I don't think anybody really pegged that as happening. What worries me about Burrow, one, they still have offensive line issues, and I think we saw that a little bit in their first preseason game. And I don't believe he's going to play this week in their second preseason game. It just sort of worries me if they can't protect him. And even he seems, just to listen to him talk, he seems like he's not completely confident in his rehab. And look, that's not a knock on him. You see and hear it all the time with athletes who undergo a major injury, that part of the rehab is mental and just trying to get your mind to believe that your body is okay and trust your body to do all those things again. And I think that's the part that he's sort of struggling with. So that makes me a little bit nervous. I do like Tua this year. I think a lot of people maybe gave up on him prematurely. And let's keep in mind, last year he was coming off a major hip injury, right? It's the same hip injury that essentially ended Bo Jackson's football career 30 years ago. Obviously, medical science has progressed to the point that Tua's back and playing football again. But I think people gave up on him because he didn't play lights out like people thought. He was coming off a major injury. It was a COVID year where he didn't really get a chance to work with guys. And he was sort of looking over his shoulder because every time he made a mistake, I think he was worried that they were going to yank him. So I think he gets better this year, especially because they added Will Fuller and they drafted Jalen Waddle. But if you're asking me which of those three guys that I want first, it's hands down going to be Herbert.
Okay. And Mike's a Bengals fan, so you kind of just crushed his heart a little bit.
I mean, I think they're going to be interesting. I think in fantasy, especially because I love their receivers, right? I mean, between Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd, it's weird because the guy that I've been drafting the most has been Boyd because he is sort of the last of the three that's still on the board. I think he's still going to see a ton of targets. He led the team in targets last year. I think he's still going to see 100 targets this year on a team that's going to throw the ball a ton. So I like their wide receivers. I think for fantasy, they're going to be interesting to watch. I hope Burrow gets back and better and back to sort of where he was last year. And at some point they got to figure out something about their offensive line because they're fear terrible. Is they're terrible. And what I don't want to see happen is I don't want Joe Burrow to sort of be Andrew Luck 2.0, that guy who has incredible talent. His team can't protect him and he ends up either, retiring early or at least just not being the guy we hoped he was because he's continually beat up.
Yeah, fair enough. And the only guy I'm looking forward to is T. Higgins. I think he's going to be their number one this year.
I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, I think we can make a case for all three of those guys. I know a lot of people are on the Jamar Chase train. I think partially because we love shiny new things in fantasy and he's definitely the newest thing in the arsenal there. And like I said, I'm going with Tyler Boyd because I just think value, right? Because he's the third one in that group. But I think all three of these guys you're going to see be very productive all throughout the year.
So this question is where last year you told me to reach for Jefferson.
Is there a rookie wide receiver that you think makes a big impact or a couple?
Yeah, I mean, the guy that I love, the rookie receiver that I love the most is Devontae Smith. I mean, look, he is the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, right? He was the best player in college football as voted by the writers last year. So, and the moment he was drafted, he immediately became Philadelphia's best wide receiver. So I think that goes a long way. Now it sort of stinks that he's gotten hurt in training camp and we haven't seen him on the field, but I think as long as he's healthy and ready to go for week one, he's going to be on the field pretty much every snap. He's going to get a ton of targets in an offense that I think is going to, like I said about Jalen Hurts, they're going to throw the ball, I think, more than people are anticipating. And Devontae Smith is going to be the recipient of all that. So he's the guy that when it comes to rookie wide receivers, he's the one that I have wanted the most in all my drafts.
Okay. And so, yeah, like I was trying to say there, this is the part where last year you told me to reach for Jefferson. So what's one wide receiver or running back I should be reaching for and maybe not waiting around until it gets to him or go ahead and grab him early?
CeeDee Lamb. He's become every football or every fantasy analyst's favorite wide receiver. And I think right now he's coming off the board in like the third round in a lot of drafts. I think that by the time we get to week one, that might move up into the second round at some point. But the Dallas offense is going to throw the football a lot. And we saw what Lamb could do last year, even when Dak was hurt. Now Dak is back. They're going to move Lamb around the formation and give him a bigger role than what we saw last season. I think he's the guy that because of what his ceiling is and what his potential is, he's the one that you're going to want to get as many places as possible.
Okay.
Who are your top three tight ends off the board? And do you think Kyle Pitts slides into the top three?
Not this year. He's not in the top three this year. It's for me, it's Travis Kelce, head and shoulders above everybody else. Then Darren Waller at 2, George Kittle at 3. I've seen Pitts drafted as the fourth tight end. That is a little bit too high for me right now. I understand it. I understand why people are doing it. I just can't quite get down with doing it. But I think that next year, if things go as we hope they do, I think next year you'll be talking about him very much in that same line with Kittle and Kelce and Waller. I think you'll be talking about him in that level.
Okay. Do we got a top team defense?
I mean, I think your top team defense probably, I don't know, maybe the Rams. I think I'm still advocating like you just wait until the very last round to get
I
your
do.
defense.
I usually do. You take your kicker and your defense. And
Right. Or even, even if your draft doesn't force you to take a kicker or defense, maybe don't. Like I've gone through plenty of drafts where I don't take a kicker or defense, and then I wait until week 1, and then I see who's available, look at the matchups, and I look at what's on my roster, because especially if you're drafting now. I know some people are doing drafts now. Make another running back or a wide receiver. See what happens over the last couple of weeks of the preseason. Maybe somebody moves up and gets a bigger role. Maybe, you don't wish injury on somebody, but somebody gets hurt. That means an opportunity opens up for somebody else. So just wait until the last minute. You can grab a defense or a kicker off the waiver wire, like literally minutes before kickoff of the first game. Yeah. So that would probably be my best advice there.
Where you drafted Michael Thomas?
It's funny. I drafted him recently because he was still on the board in like the 8th or 9th round, something like that.
Wow.
Well, because people are scared. Nobody really knows when he's going to be back and be available to play. I think at that point, though, like he was like my 4th wide receiver. So I felt like it was worth the risk. If it's a while before he comes back, then, so be it. I've got some other guys that can hold me down until then. And then when he comes back, if he's back to being Michael Thomas again, I feel like I got a really, really good receiver at a really, really great value, and ideally potentially have basically 2 wide receiver ones on my roster. But I know people are sort of scared right now because nobody really has any clarity about how long he's going to be out. The fact that he seemed unhappy with the Saints. I know they're trying to work that out right now. But there's just so much uncertainty around him that people are kind of staying away.
I seen a meme the other day about how Belichick will probably give a 3rd round pick or something.
That seems to be the way, right? That's always the way with him.
Yeah, that's for sure. What about sleepers this year?
I think, if you want to go deep sleepers, let's start with maybe not so deep, but like Michael Gallup, talked about CD Lamb and how much I love him. And I think that's great. Michael Gallup, I loved the last couple of years. Last year, he was hurt by Dak not being around. But I think with Dak back, I think Gallup is a guy who's got a great ADP that you can pick up, who's going to be very productive as like a 3rd wide receiver for you. Much deeper sleeper. I love Amon-Ra St. Brown, the rookie for the Detroit Lions. All the reports are he is going to be sort of like Jared Goff's new version of Cooper Kupp. Working out of the slot, getting a whole lot of targets there. So I'm definitely a fan of him. I think, staying in Detroit, even though I don't think the Lions are going to be very good, I think they've got a couple of interesting sleepers. I think Jamal Williams is another one. At running back, Anthony Lynn, the offensive coordinator, basically said that he thinks he's a 1A type running back. So I think he's going to get a lot of work sharing time with DeAndre Swift, and the fact that you can get him in the 9th round or later kind of speaks to the fact that he has an enormous value. So he's a guy that I've been trying to get in as many places as I can.
Okay. Who do you got on the do not draft list or bust list?
Like I said, Odell, he's sort of, I don't want to say he's a bust, but I'm staying away just because the range of outcomes seems so wide for me that it just doesn't really make sense necessarily. I'm starting to, so I gave you a couple of Lions that I'm excited about. I'm worried about TJ Hawkinson, mostly because of where you have to draft him. Just because I don't know that, I don't know that the touchdown numbers are going to be there. I don't know that he's going to have a hard time, I think, getting big yardage totals with Jared Goff at quarterback because Goff just doesn't really throw the ball downfield, or at least he didn't those last couple of years in Los Angeles. So that is one that makes me sort of worried. Beyond that, like if the draft price is right, I think anybody is pretty much fair game. But those are a couple of guys that at least have kind of some big concerns about this year.
Who is this year's AJ Green, a veteran to avoid?
AJ Green.
And Odell, it sounds like.
Odell is definitely kind of one of those guys too. I'm trying to think of like other guys that are just kind of hanging around. I don't really know what to do with the Arizona wide receivers besides DeAndre Hopkins, right? There's Nuke. He's going to be fine. There's other guys there though that I'm not too sure about what's going to happen. I would say, I would kind of beware of, how about, we can go Cam Newton, who's a guy that I love as a player. I want to see Cam Newton go back and be great again. But there's part of me that worries that maybe he's cooked, that his best days are behind him, and that Mac Jones ends up being the starter in New England. So I'm really kind of staying away from Cam Newton at all costs right now.
I know this one is kind of going a couple different ways, but who's your wide receiver one coming off the board?
Devontae Adams. Okay. It only became that way once I was sure Aaron Rodgers was coming back.
Of course.
No, really. Like with no Aaron Rodgers, look, I still had Devontae Adams in like my top 5 or 6, even without Aaron Rodgers, because they don't really have anybody there that they can count on to throw the ball to consistently. But with Rodgers there, he's my number 1. Right behind him is very close. It's Tyreek Hill and Stephon Diggs, who I think are neck and neck. All 3 of those guys could end up as the number 1 wide receiver when the season's over. Yeah, and I see DK up there. DK, I love DK. I think I got him at like 5 or 6 right now. But yeah, Devontae, look, as long as him and Rodgers are, putting out Instagram memes together, then I think it's hard to ignore him.
A lot of people are saying AJ Brown, and I just feel like that's a little too early to put him up in that tier.
Well, I was thinking that with AJ Brown before the Julio Jones trade. I think he's still a top 10 receiver. I do think he is that good. But like I said, you don't trade for Julio Jones and not throw him the football. So that necessarily means fewer targets for AJ Brown. Like I said, I think he's a top 10 guy, but I think with Julio there, that makes it hard for him to be the number 1 receiver.
You think it's going to be AJ Brown or Julio is the number 1 there? Then
I still think it's Julio. I still think it's AJ Brown. He's been in the offense. Him and Tannehill, I think, are more familiar with each other, but it's a situation where if you draft either one of those guys, it's a win-win for you.
Okay. Anyone that you suggest I should take a late flyer on?
I'm on Raw. St. Brown is definitely one. I don't know how. Like Elijah Moore. I know he's a little bit banged up. The Jets rookie wide receiver, a little bit banged up right now, but I think he's definitely worth.
Best friend.
Yeah, I think he's definitely worth a late shot on. Gus Edwards, another guy. The Baltimore Ravens are going to run the ball a ton this year, and I think he and J.K. Dobbins are going to kind of share that workload. And
I hope you're right, because everyone's so high on Dobbins, and I hope it's a 50-50 timeshare.
People are high on Dobbins. Actually, it'll probably be a 1/3 timeshare, because it'll be Dobbins, it'll be Edwards, and then Lamar Jackson's going to run the football himself too. But they're going to run the ball a lot, and Edwards right now is going about 7 or 8 rounds later than Dobbins, so that that feels like a pretty good value to me.
And especially with Mark Andrews going down today, I don't know how bad it is, but it sounded pretty bad.
He's hurt. Rashad Bateman, the rookie they drafted, is hurt.
Yep.
Marquise Brown has been banged up. So yeah, that passing game is right now they're leaning on like Sammy Watkins. It's not a great
Hollywood
feeling.
Brown. Yeah,
it's just not a great feeling at the moment.
How about a sophomore jinx for Jefferson?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think he'll be just fine. I think part of what makes me confident in him is that Kirk Cousins tends to just throw to 2 guys. He did that before when it was Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen. Diggs leaves, Jefferson comes in, and most of those targets now go to Thielen and Jefferson. So, as long as Kirk Cousins is the quarterback, he tends to just kind of have tunnel vision. He'll sprinkle a few to Dalvin Cook or maybe Irv Smith or whatever, but most of those targets are going to be to his 2 main wide receivers. So I don't predict any really fall off for Jefferson this year.
So, Mike, do you have one before I ask one of these ones?
No, go ahead, bud.
Okay. So last year we got you to run through the pick in the divisions for me.
Mm-hmm.
Who was going to be our division leaders. I put money on the line. We did pretty good.
Okay.
Not going to lie. We did pretty good. So I'm wondering if we could pick our division leaders again this year.
Sure.
Like AFC East.
It's the Bills. I think they're just easily the best team in that division right now. Yeah.
Okay. AFC South.
Ooh, the AFC South. I think that is probably going to be, I'm going to go with Tennessee in that one. That division is going to be interesting, but I'm going to go with the Titans as sort of being the team to beat there.
AFC North.
I'm going to go with I'm going to say the Browns this year. I think the Browns are ready to take that step forward. That one's going to be a dogfight though, with the Steelers, the Ravens. Sorry about your Bengals. They are clearly the worst team in that division. I think this is the year that the Browns finally get it all together and win the division.
Okay. AFC West.
It still belongs to the Chiefs. Until further notice, it belongs to the Chiefs.
Hands down. Yeah.
Oh, that's their first. Yesterday when we had Matt Money Smith on the show, he He of course went to the Chargers on that one.
Well, I mean, they're his employer, so he sort of has to. He's sort of obligated to.
Yeah. NFC East.
NFC East. I'm gonna say the Cowboys win the division.
Wow.
With a healthy, it's not going to be pretty. I think Washington's going to be sort of nipping at their heels the whole time, but I say the Cowboys win the division.
Okay. Actually, while we're on this point,
I was just going to say, talk about the Cowboys. What do you think of Zeke this year? Does he have a bounce back year?
I think he does. I was talking to somebody else like this is the Zeke shows up in shape year. It feels to be every other year. 1 year he shows up and he's like all cut and rocked out and stuff. And then the next year, he's like in Cabo, like chilling or whatever. This is the Zeke is in shape year. So I think that's going to help him. I worry that they're not going to give him the ball quite as much, but he'll still see plenty of it. So I think he bounces back.
And what I was getting at, IDP, would you take Chase Young, your first pick?
I would probably still take Aaron Donald. I mean, the dude's just a monster.
Yeah.
Just a monster.
Okay, back to our NFC North.
NFC North, I think it's still the Packers. I think they're still the best team in that division, especially with Rodgers back.
Yeah. NFC South.
Bucks. It's going to be interesting, I think. I shouldn't say that. They might run away with this division this year because the Saints are sort of in turmoil at the moment. Nobody knows what their offense is going to look like. The Panthers are still rebuilding. The Falcons are kind of a mess. The Bucks might end up actually just kind of walking away with this thing.
And then, of course, my conference, the NFC West, which is the toughest conference.
It really is. I think the Rams are the best team in that division right now. Defensively, they're very, very good. And I think Matthew Stafford sort of rejuvenates their offense. He does things that Jared Goff couldn't. So I think the Rams are the best team in that division, but that's going to be just an all-out brawl all year long.
And last one part of this thing, if I had to pick a team that might go 0-17 this year, which team am I picking? So I'm in a survivor pool, and I always pick the team playing against them. Right?
Texans.
I was gonna say the Houston Texans is the one that jumps out to me. I mean, they are a mess in just about every sense of the word. I can't get behind them being successful at all this year.
All right. Well, that concludes all the questions I've got, and unless Mike has something. Nope.
I'm good. I'm good as well. Thank you so much for the time, Marcus. I appreciate it.
Hey, appreciate it, guys. It was fun.
Yeah, thank you, Marcus.
Looking for the most beers on tap, great steaks, great staff? Head over to the John B. Pub.
We got the best beers, steaks, chicken wings, nachos in town. Come see us at the John B. Pub.
The John B. Pub, the best bar in town. Come sign up for our football pool. Say hey sent you.